Thanks. I think the big idea here is actually this whole big idea session. This is huge. Been incredibly mind-expanding for me, but I've got a big idea too. And it all depends on whether you go along with my premise about the problem. So let's see if you agree with me on this. We at Four Moms have an office, here, right next to the convention center. And we have people now moving into the city right along here. And it's a trend that people are moving to live in the city. And what that means is these folks are very busy, and they work, and then they, like me, go home, and they never get outside. They're actually never in contact with nature. I'm perhaps overly sensitive to this because I grew up in New York City, which looks like that, and it actually is incredibly oppressive. You look up, and that's what you see, and I think the definition of oppression is big, heavy things on top of you, and this is that. And I worry that in Pittsburgh the same thing is happening. I mean, we're kind of lucky in that these red cities, this is the population density. In America, we're actually very lucky. These red cities are us. Hong Kong's like 10 times worse than New York City in terms of population density. But do you agree with me that when you're in the city all day, and then if you lived in the city, you would feel oppressed by that and want to get to nature somehow? Sort of? All right. Well, maybe it's not going to be your big idea, but let's see. So Pittsburgh, and I know why you feel this way. You feel this way because Pittsburgh's not so bad. You know, there's parks here, and there's a fair amount of open space. So I can understand that in Pittsburgh, this feeling of oppression isn't as bad. But if you live down in here and you work down in there, you're not going to, on your way home, go out for a walk in the park because you don't have time. You're basically going to be in the concrete jungle all the time. And it seems to me there's a very simple solution to this. If you actually look at the concrete jungle, there are these spaces that are just unused. It's like the trunk of your car or the basement where you just put all your stuff. It's this available space that is, in fact, in contact with nature. It's up in the sky. It's away from the chaos of the city. And it's unused, which just bothers me. It's just abandoned. And I think it's the most valuable real estate in the city. It's actually your own little park just a few steps away from where you live. And it's not touched. So obviously the solution to this is to do that. Why can't it be this is the question. Why can't we just turn our rooftops into some place great? In a place where we can, when we get home from that busy day of work, go up there and have a cocktail and watch the sunset and connect with nature a little bit, which we don't get to do in our office and then in our apartment. So why isn't it happening? It should be happening. And the answer is it actually is. So if you look at this is in New York City again. People are doing this. This is not the big idea. The big idea is still coming. So the real question is, why isn't this happening more? And if you look at the economics of it, I think that's really what drives it. There are now spaces actually being used on rooftops, but if you look at them all, and this is actually in Pittsburgh, Hotel Monaco, they're having a rooftop bar. There's an actual economic benefit. They can now get revenue from this space when they develop it. So there's a reason to pay for it and to build it out. It's not expensive, though. All you need is railing, and you need a little bit of a brick wall where the HVAC system is breathing the building, and a couple chairs and a couple planters, and you've got a rooftop space you can actually live in. So I'm thinking the maintenance and the cost of all that is less than 1% of the cost of a building. I mean, you build the whole building, and then you've got that space up there. For an extra 1% of that cost, you could do all kinds of stuff with the roof. So it's much less than that. It's probably 0.1%. Would the value of your building, would you be able to sell for 1% more if you had this? I think the answer is yes. So I think this can actually happen. I think buildings aren't doing it because it just never gets to the top of their list. They're not thinking about that as worth doing. But I think the economic value is already there. The way to sell that to them is to call it skyfront property. You know, we have riverfront property. Riverfront property is worth more. If you could move your building to the front of the river, your building would be worth more money. Well, if you move it to the sky, it would also be worth more money. You're just not doing it, and it's already there. So why don't we call it skyfront property? And now I'm going to get to the actual big idea. So here's Pittsburgh. And if we want to convince these buildings to jog them and tip them into just doing this, it's not going to cost them much, and I swear they're going to get it back because they're going to be able to charge more than 1%. It's like having a nice kitchen. That's a big selling point when you're selling a home. You get sales more easily, so your price goes up a bit. If you had this and you were showing your building to people, their heart would kind of go, it's an emotional thing, buying, and you would have some, you like that building, and you're not even sure why, but it's because of that nice rooftop spot. You can imagine having a cocktail up there. It's great. So here's the big idea. What if we had an incentive for these buildings here in Pittsburgh by making a skyfront trail? So we have a riverfront trail. We're one of the first cities, and it's actually when they were first making that, it was steel mills, and it was disgusting, and the chance of it turning into something, it was a ludicrous idea. And now we actually have that trail, and it's one of the selling points of the city. It sounds crazy to think that you would actually be able to join all these rooftops into a walking trail in the city. I mean, infrastructure-wise, the idea that you join two buildings and put a walkway between them just seems impossible, right? Well, this guy did it. He did it in one night under the cover of darkness. I mean, obviously this is doable. So the big idea is, let's go ahead. Let's have our city be the first one with a skyfront trail. And I think even if we just have that idea out there and encourage the buildings, use that space. It's skyfront space. Let's use it. I think that people will start doing it. They just need to be tipped into doing it because it's actually going to cause their property to be more valuable. It makes sense. And so please join with me in talking about that. Anybody who's involved with the buildings, and Deborah Lamb, Chief Innovation Officer for the city, I really hope you're listening. Talk about this, because if buildings think about it and get nudged into it, I think they'll do it, and we'll have a much more livable city. And the people moving back into the city will actually have a more wonderful place to be, and the people will actually have healthier and happier lives, and they'll make better products at Four Moms. Not that I'm selfish about this. All right, that's it, folks. Thank you very much.